I'd been in ministry for a few years and I just had enough. So I just quit. And I'm driving home and I know I have to have that conversation with my wife. And I pull in and she's in the kitchen making dinner and I had to stop her and say, hey, I'm done. And I told them I was done and I just needed to get out. So I found myself in retail. And retail brought me to Charlotte. And for the first time I had to find a church home, and we had to look for a church that we were just going to be a part of. And I just wanted something I could just go and just be there. And so we started going to a church called Kinetic. And it was a couple weeks after that I found myself in a small group in this setting where we're all sitting around in a circle in the living room, and the question was thrown out about, what does community mean to you? And as people started answering, I've heard this question asked a bunch of times, and I thought I knew what I was going to say, but as more people around the circle started answering, it ended up that I was last. And I started hearing everybody's answers. I started getting nervous. And I felt these walls just start to raise up around my heart. And as it got to me, I was just kind of quiet for a second, and people were just looking at me, and I said, I don't really need anybody else in my community. I have my wife, I have my friends that I trust, and I have God. I'm not here in this moment right now to build new relationships, to go deeper. I'm just here because I know that's what I'm supposed to do with my walk, is just to be around people and have this community like this. And so I'm not doing this to grow deeper with you. And I just looked at the people's faces and I knew that they were just kind of shocked maybe, or I had offended them, I don't know. But it was a realization in my heart that I was holding on to some things that I no longer could. That was starting to affect things. So I just started serving at Kinetic and just filling the little communion cups at first. And from that, I just moved on to greeting people. And after that, I just started leading the ministry that greeted people, and just so they could feel comfortable and feel safe and have a good atmosphere for when people came to church. And it wasn't too long after that where Dave said, hey, can I just meet with you weekly? And he started coaching me and started just getting to know me more and starting to push me. And one day he just called us and said, hey, can you and Michelle just meet me for dinner? And we met at Brick's, the pizza oven, and we were just sitting there. He looked at us both and said, hey, what do you guys think about just coming on staff? And I just kind of smiled, and we just kind of looked at each other, and there was something in my heart that Dave didn't even know, that I had been kind of praying for that. I was ready. I didn't know what it would look like, but I was ready to start entertaining that. But I knew if I was going to come on staff with Kinetic that I had to go to this assessment. But being in ministry and being around church all my life, I wasn't even worried about it. I knew I could go there and I would pass and be cool, and I'd be working for Kinetic and being where I wanted to be. So it's day 3 of the assessment, and I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I just want to go home. And it's Michelle and I in the room right there, and we're talking a little bit, but we have this anxiety about, we don't know what they're going to say. I thought I did, but the main assessor comes in, and Dave comes in, the lead guy at Kinetic, and Daniel, the worship guy. They come in, and we're just sitting around the room, and it's just kind of quiet at first, and that kind of awkward silence. And Brent actually looks at Michelle and says, so how are you feeling? She just begins to cry. And in my mind, I knew, I was thinking, hey, just hold it together for 5 more minutes. You're crying, and it's ruining our chance to get back in ministry. And I didn't even know he was looking at me at that moment. And he said, Joe, how are you doing? I said, I'm good. And he says, hey, I need you to hear this first. We think you have what it takes to plant, but your wife is crying right now, and you're not even connected to that. You're emotionally unconnected from her and the relationships around you. You're even disconnected emotionally from yourself. and it's hurting things around you. And we want you to be able to heal from that. We want you to be able to work on that. And that was the first moment that anybody had spoken real to me. And I had never heard that before. But I was ready to change. And I knew things were on me to make the call, to make things in my life change, to be the leader that I knew God was asking me to be. It was on me. So I called our counselor, Jim, and we started meeting with him weekly. And Michelle and I we started getting tools to help change our marriage. We started getting tools so I could connect emotionally, and Dave was meeting with me weekly and pouring into me emotionally, and he started giving me more responsibilities, giving me a whole sermon series to preach, and he handed over the finances to me, and it started making me just a better husband and a better speaker. We did 2 years of this, and we just felt like God is calling us more than ever to go plant a church. And we went back to assessment, not knowing what they were going to say. And they just looked at us and said, hey, we need you to plant a church. And we could both feel in our spirits that it just felt right that they had affirmed the call that God had put on our hearts. We went back to Charlotte, and it wasn't much longer where they called and said, hey, there's a need in St. Louis, and we want you guys to come check it out. And from the moment we got off the plane, we saw the need. We even saw the need in our hotel room. We're sitting at breakfast in the restaurant, and are watching our waitress just go from table to table, working hard, putting everything into it. And she comes to our table, and instead of just throwing our order at her, we just ask her, how are you doing? She said, I moved here from Alabama. And we said, so do you have a church home? She said, no. It's just me and my 4 boys, and I'm just kind of lonely. I don't have anybody in my corner. And we knew from that moment that we had to plant this church. We had to plant a church for the waitresses and the welders and the businessmen, for the college students that feel alone. We had to plant a church for the broken and the lonely, for those who had connection to nothing. We had to plant a church for the unchurched, or for the people that had been burned by churches. That's why we were moving to the city, to plant a church for them. We knew it was right. This is something that God's been working on and that He's been orchestrating in people's lives for a really long time. And being at Kinetic for so long, it's you guys are a part of that story now. And even if you don't pack up and you move with us, your story moves with us, and you will change lives in St. Louis because you were a part of the story that God called you to. And that is amazing. I am Joe McGrew, and this is my Kinetic.